My name is Mama Amaka. I work with an NGO for women empowerment. Basically, grassroots women in agri, civic engagement.
Okay, my name is Adejo Victor. I work with Syllabus. Gender and
So we have two questions that we're supposed to tackle during our session. And I'll go through questions. We'll start with one and then we'll move on to the other one. I think we might only have 30 minutes of time. Oh, we have an hour. Okay, perfect. We have an hour, so we can spend about 30 minutes on each question. The first question is, what have we learned? And then the second question is, how do we engage the policy environment in the work we do with smallholder farmers or women or vulnerable groups, I guess. So that would, I guess this would be agriculture. So smallholder farmers, women, or any other vulnerable groups that we want to classify. So we'll start with, what have we learned? It's a pretty broad question. So what have we learned so far over the course of the 2 days of meetings and some of the side discussions you've had with people in this room?
I think one of the things we learned is to understand government priorities and what the government priorities are in terms of the areas of work that the different agencies are doing. That's one.
Anyone else? I'm sure we've learned more.
Well, I'm glad what we know about today, CSA, and linking up with what happened yesterday on all the implementation of our government policies and priorities. As someone working with vulnerable groups, I think what we learn is that we should tease out the priorities, because it's not just going to tease out the priorities and see what funding. They will not say they do not have money now. It's first come, first served. What have they put on the plates for the next 6 months, and then we make sure we follow up to ensure that whatever they implement reaches out to the community. That's what I gained from
What I've learned so far is that as we do our work with groups, we should not go against the policy directive of the government of the country. That is what this seminar I've learned, is that we should not go against the priority that the government of the day has. That in whatever you're doing, you should put it into the system that the government is working with.
From yesterday to today, right? What I've gathered very well is that there is need for very strong commitments and everything that we are doing in the system. And there's also a need for strong linkage in the various areas, because obviously it's lacking on the various sectors. Need for
linkages
between the sectors, so that agency, that's right. And then the aspect of the government trying to be more transparent in the system, this using of ICT for most of the transactions, and those are the things that we like to do test.
The government being more transparent using
some kind of work that's going on, what are the priorities of the company, what is the plan over the next few years, short, medium, long term.
I know that it's made to increase government, based on the presentation, I see that who are not aware. So there's need to intensify advocacy at various levels. Even government agencies are supposed to be included, like some government agencies who are responsible for these aspects, like anyway, they should be encouraged to carry out the campaign to make people aware of what government is doing.
Intensify advocacy and communication.
Also, in line with what we're saying, not advocacy from us to the government, the government also should see the need to improve the knowledge of the NGO world among the civil servants, because yes, in the capacity building in relation to what we do, so that there will be seamless coexistence between the two segments.
Government's capacity building within the NGO space. That capture
Yeah.
and government. So capacity building within outwards as well.
I don't know what this has already been said, but one of the two things that I thought about here, one, there's not a strong enough interministerial collaboration. We've talked about that in the past. It's been captured. And then the second thing is around creating awareness within the public sector about what civil society is doing. And the potential for partnerships with civil society to achieve this goals.
Awareness, advocacy.
With people from the Vice Presidency, not people from the Ministry of Education, not people from the Ministry of Agriculture, not people from National Planning, but where? Vice Presidency. That's what it is. So that's what I'm trying to explain. But the money is in education. But Vice President, so this is what happens in our country. Unless there's coordination, unless there are checks and balances, clear measurements and evaluation, and transparency on the process for information flows and the process for contracting, you won't see much progress. For food security, one last thing I'll say is MacArthur Foundation is funding civil society organizations for Kaduna State and Lagos State to track how funding is being dispersed for school feeding and how contracts are
That's just 2 states, only 2 states.
2 states. But I actually think it's something that we can benefit from the learnings because it's already another foundation. I don't know if you guys are talking about it. Yes. But it's something to think about because I'm serving as an advisor for them. So anyway, to cut a long story short, if I had to, as a manufacturer, I really need to understand what the process is for even engaging with the government. It needs to be clear, timelines have to be there, and there has to be a transparent process for selecting. What we see in the papers, NASCO was selected for these 3 states. Who is NASCO selected? Why NASCO and not others?
How was it done?
I don't know.
Can we, if gentlemen and ladies, if you don't mind, can we use this one example? Because it's good to talk about it. Can we do a practical of this? Give an example that in the next 6 months, which says strong linkage between sectors and entities. Let's come out for school feeding, for example, the Vice President's office and education and what?
In the current budget, what they are calling social protection program, 4 pillars of it are housed under the office of the Vice President, not education or health or anything. And they are all, that is where the thing is run, including the unconditional cash transfer, school feeding, and some other things. So this was structured deliberately. I don't know the reason why they didn't give it to us. It's centralized. And to me, it was an opportunity to go when he would draw resources from the sector if he wanted. Now, secondly, the 2 pilots, the Kaduna and the Lagos pilot, are completely opposite of each other. In structure and delivery and design, the Kaduna model was one that started first and is very basic. Cook, give to food vendors, distribute to schools, and there's some additional. The Lagos model is a lot more elegant and
First net is almost like a PPP. Some people have come as funders and they are going to provide funding as an investment. And the Lagos State government will now put an equity fund. They will now bring food processors to join into the package, and they will redeem it like a soft bond after some years. So the government money isn't going to be in the black drain. There's a funder, there's a project management, there are food manufacturing outfits in it. It's packaged almost like a social finance. Yes, it's actually. I saw the model and it's beautiful. I think this is a learning scope. If the Lagos model works, I'm sure others will work.
It's just a word. But it's not a word. International development in foreign direct investments, which we need some time because of exchange of educations and development. The important thing here is that how can we make sure that we understand that it's going to start saving, cutting all the loopholes. They should also look at the social impact side of the governance. That total withdrawing all the money from the banking system when Nigerian government, at least in our own context, 70% of the flow into our economy is from the government. And if that money is sitting idle in the central bank, no value is added. And I think the first thing I learned in business school is that money has velocity. If I give Falani, she gives to the person, it goes down, it creates joy. I don't know about you people, in the first 5 years, I get on the average about 5 calls from regulations. Who out of my don't call me for anything? They call it, my child can't go to school, I bring them back to school. My child is ill, this and that. These are small process indicators that cause problem in the community. So we must always look at that side. It's our responsibility to the government. As you're doing this, please look at the other side too. The budget was not passed, and I completely agree with the way the government ran this budget. It was more inclusive, more transparent, even though it took such a long time. But at the same time, they mocked up storage in the system. Why Mohammed keeps telling us that it's savings? It's not savings, it's our money that was supposed to have been used. And they mocked up. Yes, the MDAs didn't use it probably timely, but I can tell you what, in the UK University, they have a big project they are doing. The quarter, they were supposed to pay a warrant. You know, when the builders build, they present a warrant and they are paid. The months, the builder completed a milestone and they were supposed to be paid 2.4 million. That was when the month. Is that savings? It's not savings. But that's 2.4 million that would have gone to the contractor. And that contractor would have used that to pay his salaries, pay his suppliers, and that would have, you can imagine the multiplier effect. So I want us to, it's a big lesson for me today. Omar pleaded with me to tell that because I really wanted to take it to task. So it's important that it's our responsibility as a civil society to tell government, your eyes should be on the ball. The sole mission of government is to provide social services to people. I don't know if
Yeah, but your point you made, somebody needs to be paid. This money is not going to be withdrawn. The person is sleeping, it's still going to be paid.
But they have, that is the thing, the money is sitting there, they're not paying people.
Well, I think they were waiting for budget implementation. Now they started releasing from what they said. They started releasing
6 months.
But he made an explanation. He said they mocked up.
Yes.
And then they didn't know who from who. You know, it's just, I've been saying it for days who can listen. I say it's the same thing with this multiple forex, whatever. You first throw the thing and you're saying you are developing guidance notes. Isn't it meant to be having guidance notes
the other way around.
Then you now throw it out and say, we have now relaxed this policy and this, you know, so it's almost the same thing. First mop up the money. Then you now start saying, $2 came from HGK, 2 from Fola, you know. So,
meanwhile, people are suffering.
Exactly. That's
I mean, we have 2 examples, someone from September last year, you know. So there are 2 examples in this room already.
Sir.
There was an issue when the central bank lady was talking and Madam Chile was engaging her. She didn't even know the CSO language. You could see how ignorant they are of CSO work at the government. She was talking about corporate social responsibility, which is completely different. So I think one clear issue that has come up is, they sit around the table, they were talking about Mexico and GTZ. These are not CSOs. I mean, they are international development partners. So I think it's our task now not to wait for government to invite us. We have to organize and begin to make ourselves more visible, particularly for us working advocacy. How do we ensure that we go after these different government institutions and begin to ask to be involved from the very beginning? That's one for me, that there isn't much CSO involvement, and then there are opportunities for us to actually engage, because they build these policies and then they work backwards trying to get the answers. And also in terms of the health policy, it was very good for me because I finally got to see the entry points. For those of us working in nutrition advocacy, the entry points, because it's clear that the minister is very passionate about one PHC per ward. So how do we begin to engage one PHC per ward to advance our issues and also to get the dates? Because actually the draft of that policy is ready, but it was developed by consultants. CSOs were not involved. And these dates that they are calling, so everybody, we now have to keep that date in view and see how we can get ourselves invited, because they might also end up inviting Mexico and with us. So it was very good for me to have this meeting.
Thank you.
Just to write on, my comment had been CSOs need to.
Sorry, did you capture that?
Yeah. Let me just read what I wrote.
Who was asked? You were asked.
No, but you were just trying to explain CSO involvement. It was just explanation of CSO involvement.
So for certificate, I wrote the fund claim to be safe. Here in TSA, we are mocked up from unspent funds.
Well, if you say unspent funds, that's what it's meant to be. So that means they did the right thing. Well, these are money meant to be paid. I mean, money that's meant to go
goods and services
for services rendered to government. And the other one is inadequate CSO involvement in government policies. I mean, I raised my hand yesterday, they didn't call me. I wanted to ask how many CSO are in the committee of the PAC? No, the PAC task force. How many CSO are there? I don't think there's.
The CSO should be proactive rather than reactive. The CSO in Nigeria has always been reactive. How do you be proactive? CSO must know how to frame the message within the context of the policy we are supporting. Everybody's work is to make Nigeria great, isn't it? Now, the slice of the cake is the environment. So, as CSO put in enough energy, there are disjointed messages from CSO, and that's where it's not working. How do you frame your message? You frame your message, they are telling you this is the umbrella. The little leg that you are taking, that's all you are. It's just this little leg, this little leg. It won't work. It has to be framed within the umbrella and context in which policymakers understand. So the CSO language must change. That's what I'm happy. I learned a lot, at least outside the health sector, even building on what I know, concerning. So we must open our mind to learning and seeking information. By the most CSO fight for a cause without a depth of the knowledge, and then we are thrown off balance, and then we too do like government, we will go back and re-armor ourselves. Secondly, CSO was built on partnership, because there are subtle competition and things don't work, because there's no CSO that has the expertise in all areas. We must be able to recognize comparative advantage and partner and resonate on that. For us to make a difference, look at the Gates grantees, and I've raised it to Gates all the time. Okay? You give out a slice of the cake, cut it tiny, tiny, tiny. I don't know how many projects are on advocacy. Are they linking up? They started from a context of saying, show me the evidence that advocacy works. How many CSO have been able to deliver data to show that your contribution, this is what it's helped to change, because you can't do it alone, but it brought synergy. Even CSOs do not have data. All we rely on is qualitative storytelling. So it won't work. The environment has changed. Show me the evidence. Show me what works. Who are you partnering with? Because not one person can do it. Otherwise, then Nigeria would have been just Mr. President to do work. So what I've learned is CSOs must be able to, and it's not true that CSOs are not involved. CSOs are involved. If they show you the list of the people they share documents, you'll be amazed. But many CSOs go as participation, not making impact. For example, you call a critical meeting where you need people, they call you for a meeting ahead of time. What CSO should have done is I'll do my own research before that on that topic, even if I don't know. Looking at my scanning area. What is my strength? If I'm a data person, I will contribute data to them in that discussion.
We take it down to the sector that we're in.
All women, all with quality indicators.
So is it needs by the for, right? That's what I'm saying. You send more needs assessment or more advocacy for needs on better needs assessment. I don't know how to do it. But what I wrote here is more needs assessment and stakeholder engagement in the process of developing pro budget needs to be allocated for, or maybe that's the
I wrote one assessment and stakeholder engagement in the process of developing subsequent budget in order to capture the needs.
Okay, that's fine. That's a report. That's fine.
No, but he said he doesn't like report.
Okay, that's good. So the next the second lesson is that functional evaluation has been incorporated in the budget implementation process. So what do we need to do? How does that affect our work? Quickly, monitoring and evaluation mechanism has been incorporated in the budget and its implementation process. So how does that affect us? How does that affect what we do in terms of our engagement? What should we do? What should we be doing?
I am of the opinion that the monitoring and evaluation aspect should be independent this time around.
Okay.
Yeah, in the sense that it should not come under a ministry. No, it should be independent.
No, it must become under a ministry.
No, but what you are saying is from an outsider.
An outsider.
Civil society should be able to monitor.
Yeah, but the idea is that what you do is that you advocate that since you say there is a monitoring and evaluation captured inside the budget, you advocate for the specific targets and indicators to be made available to you track it.
Can you say that to me?
That's true.
Advocate for
you advocate for specific PFIs that means made available for tracking.
Specific targets. Yes, specific targets and indicators.
Let's move.
Yep.
By the people. CSOs are voices
by citizens.
Of the people.
By the citizens.
Yeah. In fact,
like citizens.
I don't know.
Wait, it will be made available. Okay. But how does that? Okay, this is one way forward, right? But isn't for us in terms of our own work? How does that shape our work? Because the question is, how does that affect our own work environment? How does that, we as CSOs now, how does that affect our work? It should be tracked. So I think we should get involved. We should support. For me, I would say either support independent verification or independent monitoring processes, or develop independent monitoring process. This is me thinking as one campaign anyway.
Can we say CSOs from citizens?
No, I understand. No, this is fine. I'm only saying that this is
we have asked the government to make things available. So this is their work. What about for us as citizens? What do we do? Right? So I'm thinking that we should also, either support or develop independent monitoring teams or mechanisms. Yes.
5 minutes, we're coming back to them. It's the work you did me. I'm reading. You needed information from me.
You just copy and paste it.
5 minutes.
And then you present.
No, I'm not present.
Why?
Better choose somebody else.
So we should do our presentations. One of the two of you, let's vote. Nigeria is a very democratic country. Let's vote. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8.
It is my pleasure to invite Iloba. Thank you very much. And we welcome you.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Iloba. I'm going to make a presentation for our group on health. Go up to the next table. So the first part of the question we were asked is what we have learned so far. The first lesson is the relevance of the importance of making ourselves relevant to play our part in various government policies and interventions. The second lesson are the priority areas of the Federal Ministry of Health to make efficient recommendations as well as the deficiencies in their interventions. Another one is the right time to key into the midterm development plan to engage the government. Then another lesson is the Treasury single account and how to monitor budget releases and expenditure. Another lesson is funds which are claimed to be saved via the TSA that we are mopped up, we are actually money that we are meant to pay for services rendered by the government. Another lesson is inadequate CSO involvement in government policies. Disjointed messages from CSOs which should have been framed in the language that government should understand. Can you go up, please? And CSOs should recognize the comparative advantage in partnership and build on that instead of competition, and the relevance of data for CSO effectiveness. And CSOs need to be identifiers, activators, catalysts, and process evaluators, using the NH Act as an example. They need to come together as CSOs and effectively utilize or implement the ideas created from meetings such as this one. And the last one are the 4 key priority areas of the government in the health sector. And the next question, how do we engage the policy environment in the work that we do with or for the vulnerable groups? The first one was to engage the government as one group or platform and in a proactive manner, instead of doing it in silos or in several separate groups. We should come together as one group to have a stronger voice and one platform to engage the government, especially at the sub-national level, and to identify the existing policies that can key into the current interventions of the government. So when we look at what government is doing, we need to identify policies that relate to those government interventions and key into them, and if possible, sensitize the government on those policies. CSOs should also be more visible in showing data for our contribution, because government will take us more serious when we show our contribution in their various interventions, and it will also encourage their buy-in. There should be information transfer for every existing groups or coalition, which brings us to knowledge management. Most of us work in coalitions, we don't know what we are doing. We don't know whether this one is doing exactly what we are doing. So we should share information on what we are doing so that we can be more effective in our work. And we need to start now to seriously engage the government with the present opportunity in revitalizing the PHCs and find out the members of the committee for the 10,000 PHC revitalization, and to integrate and focus on the vulnerable groups in our area of intervention, to ensure that the grantees' work fits into the donors' overall objectives, so that we don't start working, outside what our donors want us to do. CSO should also take advantage and be part of the process of developing strategies for the government in the medium and long term. As they are in the beginning of the process of developing those strategies, we should take advantage of that and be part of that process to strengthen the existing institutions and also render technical assistance and reporting back to the minister on our contributions. This also goes to having a composite report on our contributions and let them know what we are actually doing. Then letting the government know what we are doing and encourage by it. Then find out the selection criteria for CSO engagement with the Ministry of Budget and Planning. But now we have already formed a group among ourselves in the health group, and we have shared contacts already, and we are trying to start what we are talking about. Thank you.
Thank you, Secretary. Thank you, presenter. Thank you very much. So, like we agreed. Okay, another round of applause for the help. Okay, please write down your comments and questions. We'll come back to take them at the end. The agri sector, are we ready? Thank you. Can we welcome the presenter of the agri sector? I did your Victor, right? Okay, thank you very much.
Okay, for the agri sector, 20 people in the group there. So we'll go straight to the first question. All right, good evening, everyone. Question 1 for agri sector. What have we learned? We have come to understand government's priority and policy direction in terms of the national plan. We've been able to also tease out priorities of government and know what needs of the vulnerable population they've captured. We understand government's policy and areas of development better now. We also know that there's a need for strong M&E and interagency linkages. 5, government, we also know that now the government is promoting transparency in terms of using ICT. We've learned that Nigeria has some plans, pardon me. We talked yesterday about the short-term, medium-term, and long-term plans. We know now that there's a need for advocacy and to intensify awareness on government policies. There's a need for capacity building within government and out of government. We have also learned that there's a need to create awareness on what the CSOs are doing among government agencies. And then government needs to involve CSOs in the policy formulation process as well as implementation.
And then finally, we now know that there is need for communication between government agencies and, I think that's the sentence. Okay, and improving their plans in terms of engagement with the civil society. Thank you. Let's go to question 2. How much do we need, how much do we engage the policy environment? We started by saying here that there is need for advocacy to states for the development of their strategies in the agri sector. There are some states that probably have policies on ground that they do not even know they have, so there's need to begin to advocate to the state government to see the policies they have on ground in the agri sector. We say partners need to create awareness on the direction and framework on how money is spent on school feeding using transparency. There's this conversation around the school feeding program and the need for transparency from the national to the state level. There's also a need for partners and CSOs to provide technical support to government in providing access to information on funding from development partners. We're not really sure how much is coming into the sector at the state level as well as the national, so there's need for engagement in terms of providing technical know-how for government to understand how this is happening. And then CSOs and partners will also advocate for credible data and specific information. Here we're talking about disaggregating data to know how many women, youths are being engaged in that sector and who is benefiting from government investment. We're also looking at reaching out to various MDAs to get update information on policies. There are different policies in the sector that we also need to catch up on. Most of the state governments have also drawn from the federal government policy on agriculture. We need to know what exactly is happening in that area. And then we have also said there is need for capacity building for implementers of state level agri policies. Let's go. 12. We said partners need to advocate for inclusiveness of women and youth in the agri policy. And then emphasis, the needs, partners and CSOs need to emphasize nutrition in agri-technology programming. And then finally, there's a need to form a strong CSO group to advocate for agri policies at the different levels, especially in the states. Thank you.
One campaign, and we have quite a number of us on the multi-sectoral group. So what we try to do is, because we saw there was that health and then it's the agri group, so we didn't bother to look at the agri and the health presentations. We just basically focused on the budget and planning, as well as the TSA presentation, and then a little bit about the CBN on financial inclusion. So these are the thoughts that we had. We thought, in terms of the lessons, what have we learned from the presentations we've seen, particularly from the government policymakers who have related to us? We saw that 2016 budget was based on the zero-based budgeting, and that is what we're made to understand. And that we saw that it was also based on a strategic plan that was dovetailed into a short-term plan called the 2016 budget. We also saw that monitoring and evaluation has been incorporated into the budget itself, as well as the implementation process. It's been shown, but that came out to us clearly from the presentations. We also saw that from the presentation, especially for the particular 2016 budget, and in implementing the zero-based budget, there's a capacity deficit or limited capacity within the MDS. We agreed in the room that there was a lot of rush work that was done, so the 2016 had its own deficiencies. On that basis, we saw that currently there is increased awareness and heightened interest of citizens in the budget process itself, which we thought was quite key in moving forward. And we saw also that it has been stated there's more willingness and more transparency has been stated on the part of government, particularly in the Ministry of Budget and Planning. And we thought that is quite interesting. As well, they've also asked donors to align this has been sung forever, but it was quite succinct this time, that donors should align with the strategic plan as well as the priorities of government or the budget priorities instead of doing what they think is important. And then we've seen that the policy or the strategic plan has been made flexible to fit with the global development agenda called the SDGs. We also saw that the 2016, I think that's repeated. So we saw in number 9 that we've seen the importance of financial inclusion of the rural for their own economic empowerment, as well as seeing that the CBN has set a target for itself to reduce financial exclusion from 43% to 20% by 2020. We thought those were key targets that the CBN set for themselves that we think should be followed up. And then finally we saw that the TSA policy is a very good one. It's really important to promote transparency and anti-corruption, but the challenges being faced also pose a risk for service delivery in critical sectors, and then those challenges need to be urgently addressed. What do we think we should be doing going forward? We thought that, particularly to deal with the 2016 budget, we thought that going forward, there needs to be more needs assessment and stakeholders engagement in the budget development process itself, because we thought that was not adequately done, particularly with the zero-based budget concept. And we thought that we should, as CSOs, we should be advocating for increased participation of citizens and stakeholders. In terms of the monitoring and evaluation, we thought that for us, CSOs should begin to advocate for that the specific targets and indicators that they have set in the budget process itself, in the implementation process itself, should be made available so that citizens can track them. So it's not just for them to have it and then use it for themselves, but citizens should be able to have access to these indicators and track them, and then we can hold them to be accountable to these indicators themselves. And then so we also said that it is important for CSOs to develop independent monitoring and evaluation mechanisms for the budget process itself. We also believe that citizens or CSOs should advocate for additional capacities for the MDAs as well as the citizens. Particularly with the zero-based budget concept, we think that it is important for the MDAs to begin to learn the process better so that they can do the things rightly in terms of aligning the short-term plan called the budget with the strategic plans based on needs that have been popularly identified. We also believe that CSOs should organize the opinion of citizens to policymakers for popular decisions. The point is that now there is increased interest by citizens in the budget process. There should be a way of harnessing those opinions, the interest, into specific, coherent, articulate policy recommendations in terms of felt needs that the government should be able to take into account in developing its own budget process. We also believe that going forward, CSOs should begin to position themselves to engage more with the budget implementation process. I think this has been captured by other presenters as well. So, in terms of the agenda, when it has been stated by the Ministry of Health and Planning that CSOs should align themselves with strategic plan of government. So what we thought should happen is that the government themselves should translate those plans into operational plans that is costed. That is the only time donors will be able to align, because it becomes clearer, it becomes implementable. But when the plans and policies are in the shelves, donors wouldn't be able to align, basically. Then, of course, since the development plans, as we have been elucidated, is very well aligned with the SDGs, we thought going forward as well, CSO should begin to work more with the SDGs itself, so that we don't. If you are working with the SDGs, you are automatically working to achieve development plans of Nigeria. So we said the CSO also should be involved in creating awareness and advocating for additional access, as well as building capacities and more strategic engagement with the CBN to review the strategies to reduce financial exclusion, so that if they have put their plans together, we need to know whether these plans are working or not working, so we should be able to engage with them. We should be able to increase the capacity of citizens themselves to see how they can also access the various programs that are currently going on, So basically, we think that CSO should be more engaged in this process of financial inclusion and should not be left in the hands of the CBN alone. Then we thought that if the CBN has set a target for itself for 2020 to reduce financial exclusion to 20%, we should be able to monitor this process effectively to ensure that this target is met, at least be part of the process to ensure that they are accountable to their own commitment. And then finally, we thought that it is better for us to continue to advocate for continuous stakeholders engagement and public enlightenment to resolve all outstanding issues or challenges or emerging issues with the TSA. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Another round of